Yo, what's up, everybody? How's it going? Oh my God, Colin's already shitting on Tom Brady in the chat. What a way to start the stream. Okay, how's everyone doing? Chat is going, popping off already. Let me know, as always. How's my audio sound? We don't got no music today, so no lo-fi beats, but we have an incredible discussion that's about to take place. I'm very excited for this. This is going to be good. Yeah. And also, I don't think we're going to have a lagging issue today because I am using a different streaming platform. So you have all of that to look forward to. You're not going to have to deal with the constant buffering issue that we've been encountering over the past week or 2 weeks or so. Audio's Gucci. That's awesome. Thank you, Colin. Okay. So how's everyone doing? Shadowban Refugee, Arif, Colin, Daniel. We got hella people in the chat already. Okay, so I didn't stream yesterday, did I? I don't think, or no, I didn't. I didn't stream yesterday, but I put out that video with Brianna and Sam Sita. That was an interesting one. That was hilarious, actually. I thoroughly enjoyed making that video. And also, I actually just put out a video that is pertinent to today's discussion. So before I bring on our guests, I want to show you this video that I just put out. Let's see here. I'll just share my screen. So this video right here on the far left, Biden freezes Trump rule that lowered insulin prices. Go check it out after the stream. I think, I put out so many videos, and I don't do a video unless I'm like feel excited about the story or think it's a story that should be heard by people. That video, I think, is one of the most important videos I've ever done, specifically because like no one's talking about the fact that Biden literally just froze a plan or a policy that Trump had put into place that lowered insulin prices and epinephrine prices, which I don't know what that is, but it's some sort of like an allergy medication. We all know Biden's doing absolute fuck shit in the White House already. So yeah. Oh, that's the EpiPen. Okay, that's just like a long way of saying EpiPen. That's even more fucked up. Okay, so yeah, Mona's in the chat. How's it going? Steven on Twitch. Ricky Rants is in the stream. It's always a pleasure to have Ricky Rants here. All right, everybody. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna bring in our guests. You guys all ready? Thumbs up if you're good to go. Okay, cool. Awesome. So without further ado, here we go. We're going to be having a discussion tonight about fighting for Medicare for All during the Biden era. I think this is a conversation that you are all going to be stoked to be here for, and I'm stoked to have the conversation with everyone. So here we go. How's it going, everybody? Let me unmute you. Okay, you're all unmuting yourselves. Sorry, yeah. I'm double muting you. Okay, awesome. What's up? So I'll just like briefly say your names, and then maybe you could all just we'll go one by one, actually. So first right below me here is my hero, Savage Joy Marie. So Savage Joy, you want to like say a little bit about who you are, what you do, why you're fighting, like maybe like a couple minutes or something like that, and then we'll move on to the next person.
Okay, sure. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. Some of you guys may know me from sharing my story at Force the Vote Town Hall and also at the DC protest. I unexpectedly started going blind last year. And, I just kind of shared my story about what that has been like. And, becoming disabled unexpectedly and just, having to deal with the trauma of that, but also dealing with the exacerbation of depression and anxiety while, trying to grapple with not being able to see and also having thousands of dollars in medical bills, constant phone calls to health insurance places, things like that. So I was very honored to speak at those things. and shared my story because I am one of millions. I've had a show for almost 4 years. It's been on a few different platforms, but it's Savage Joy with the Unruly Hour. I have a lot of great guests, and then I also do a lot of rants. I I recently came out with this shitlib parody with Peter Douche, aka Nate Sliver, aka Pat's the Burner. So it's a parody book about the resistance. So you can check it out at savageandpat.com. And then also my Force the Vote experience, it basically inspired me to start a second book. And of course, you know, I have very little eyesight, so I'm doing it by dictation. But I wanted to give people an opportunity to share their own stories. And nothing like this has ever been done. So I figured it just has to be. So I'm basically compiling stories of people who have, you know, had to file medical bankruptcy, or go to Canada for insulin, or you know, lost health insurance with the loss of a job, anything like that, any, you know, any kind of tumultuous process with the so-called healthcare system, and just compiling a bunch of stories, because I have the hope that maybe some people who don't support Medicare for All, or even reps, I think sometimes they're desensitized to percentages and, you know, oh, 80% of people or 3,000 people, you know, this puts a face to it, so to speak. And hopefully this can, you know, influence some people and, you know, show that we need some more humanity, and this needs to come to fruition. If you want to submit your story, it's healthcareviolence@mail.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I, on so many occasions already, have been inspired and touched by your story. And I thank you for being a voice for so many people who are voiceless and you know, don't have the capacity to speak out and fight. And yeah, just you do incredible work. So thank you for everything. I think I speak on behalf of like everyone in the audience and in this stream. You are a hero. Next, we have Aly Alexandra. We have, it appears as though we have many Aly fans in the chat, you know, popping off already saying, love Aly's work surrounding the DSA coverage and Force the Vote. So, Aly, if you'd like to say a few words, introduce yourself. I think everyone would be stoked.
I'm happy to see so many people here. I did not know I had this. It's nice to have a little group. No, I mean, you know, what's been going on, I love that all these independent creators are kind of collaborating lately. I think that's been really effective, just for kind of crossing groups over. Honestly, I really can't beat that introduction that we just had, so I don't nearly have as much of a record as she does, but I love research. I'm a big research nerd, so that's kind of what prompted this particular project as far as going, I don't want to say going after DSA, because a lot of you have read my article, and I've done multiple articles on DSA, but really the goal was more to hopefully encourage them, meaning the leaders, to kind of rethink how they organize and how they respond to movements that are outside of the DSA. So that was really interesting for me. I'm going to be honest, I did not expect it to gain as much traction as it did. I'm glad it did, because it looks like DSA is internally trying to make some changes, which by the standards of DSA, that's pretty good. But yeah, for the most part, I like to be pretty independent / objective when it comes to lots of politics, but something like Medicare for All, when you can get so many different groups of people behind it, there's really no reason to not push forward with it. And that's kind of what I seek to do with a lot of my writing, and just, you know, I do a lot of contributing work for HLM, Hard Lens Media as well. I think Kit's in the chat. So you can find me there. But a lot of what I'm really looking to do is connect different groups of people that might not be talking to each other, connect them together just to find some common ground. And I know that sounds cheesy, but really there's never been a better time for that to happen. So that's kind of the space that I'm in, and it's good to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for the work you do as well. I mean, I definitely also agree with your characterization of the work you've been doing surrounding DSA, and that it's not really like it's not like going after DSA so much as it is like exposing their own flaws, right?
Yeah.
And really at the end of the day, trying to make the organization more democratic and work as it's supposed to. So
Yeah, that's all I was trying to do.
yeah, you've been doing incredible work, and you know, I've covered it on my show, and I know Jimmy Dore's covered it, and obviously like Hardlands Media, you put it out there and on your Substack as well. By the way, for everyone who's watching right now, if you are on the YouTube stream, maybe if you're on Facebook or wherever, in the description of the video, you can find everyone who is on our stream right now, everyone's Twitter accounts and like their YouTube, Substack, things like that. So be sure to go check those out. And then last but definitely not least, we have the one, the only DJ Joe Nice. And we met like for the first time randomly at the protests, the Force the Vote protests in DC.
Yep.
And you had this incredible sign that just had like all these progressive policies that we need to be fighting for, right? Through whoever's president, be it Biden, be it Trump, be it whoever comes next, you know?
Right.
And I was really stoked on that. And, you know, you, me, and Colin, who's in the chat right now, we started talking about Libby, Montana. And we're gonna dive into it in this stream. So maybe don't touch on it yet, but I was just blown away by your knowledge on that subject and your tenacity in the fight for progressive issues as a whole. So if you'd like to say a few words about yourself and kind of what brought you here, I think everyone would appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Jackson, thank you for having me on tonight. Aly and Savage Joy, wonderful to be sharing space with both of you, and out to everybody in the chat room that's sending messages and tweets and everyone sharing the stream. Thanks to all of you. I'm a DJ, got a couple of master's degrees. One of them is in a discipline of healthcare. I understand the Affordable Care Act a little bit better than most people that are walking around the streets wearing masks right now. And I understand that the Affordable Care Act is a horrible piece of legislation. It's terrible. And it's neither affordable nor does it actually care for people. And, you know, when we met, you know, I was standing right next to you when you had the megaphone here, don't drop the ball, Medicare for all. You know, I was right there next to you. Everybody in, nobody out. That's what healthcare is all about. And I've traveled extensively throughout my DJing life. You know, I've been to 48 countries. I've been to some places that you're not going to find right away on a map. And I've in a lot of the conversations that I have with a lot of my friends internationally, we end up talking about politics. We end up talking about healthcare and other things. And you get to realize that so much of what everybody wants is the same stuff. It's just people have different ways of going about it. And we have this insidious way of letting, you know, politics and tribalism to political parties get in the way of actually progressing forward as a society. So one of the ways that I think we can progress forward in a society, amongst all of the stuff that I had on my sign, including rewriting the Constitution and reparations for American descendants of enslaved people, is healthcare, because healthcare is a human right. It's a human right as part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, actually in Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we should have healthcare, and we shouldn't have, quite honestly, Jackson, and I love the fact that you did that protest and organized everybody. But if we lived in a country where everybody was getting what we needed, we shouldn't have had to march for something that we should already have. So the reason why we're going to have these conversations tonight and more of these conversations and hopefully more rallies is so our people in Washington, D.C. that represent our interests can actually represent our interests and get us Medicare for all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I couldn't have said that better myself. And also, it blows my mind how many countries you've been to. And I think that anything, you're obviously your studies in surrounding healthcare, but like the fact that you've been to so many countries, 48, right? And you've witnessed firsthand that like every other developed nation and many undeveloped nations already has or have universal healthcare. So it blows my mind, and it's incredible when you have someone who can speak to this and has a firsthand experience at seeing this play out all across the globe. So,
and I've worked with refugees in the past before at both different graduate schools, and I've worked with refugees that have come from countries that are war torn, and even in some of these war torn countries, they have health care. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If they're leaving their country because of a well-founded fear of persecution and trying to get to the United States, and they have health care where they were, and they're trying to get here, and then we're trying to figure out where people who aren't refugees in our own country aren't getting health care. This doesn't make any sense. So, so I think the more we continue to have this dialogue and the more we continue to fight and push for it, hopefully something good will come from this.
I hope so too. Now, I want to start off the conversation tonight. First of all, actually, before we start off, everyone who's in the stream right now, be sure to drop a like, because this shit's getting pushed down in the algorithm by YouTube. So drop a like, help us boost up in the algorithm. Maybe we can appear in the search results of some Sam Cedar audience members and shift their perspectives.
Oh Lord.
No, for real. Like the first thing I want to talk about tonight is the fact that, as I just pointed out, the video I just published before we went live, Biden is already freezing a Trump rule that was lowering insulin prices for American consumers, people who need this to stay alive. And in addition to that, he is, already beginning to walk back on his public option healthcare plan. I mean, it's blowing my mind what's happening already. And the ramifications of him doing this are we already know what they are. It's quite simple. More people are going to die. More people are going to suffer. More people are going to file for medical bankruptcies. It's going to be tragic. So I guess my first question to all of you, and answer this in any way you'd like. There is no right or wrong answer. Do you all have, and before I launch the question, all of you, thank you so much, Justin B, for the $20 super chat. Thank you for supporting independent media. I appreciate that. Question. Do you all have any hope that we can actually do what so many shit libs told us we could do when they were pressuring all of us to vote for Joe Biden? And that, do you think we could actually hold his feet to the fire or hold him accountable in some capacity and try to push for Medicare for All, either through executive action or through Congress? Do you think that there is any hope whatsoever that we can actually band together and make this happen? I know that's like a massive question to start off with. And I think, there's really no right or wrong answer. Like I would love to hear people out who say yes to that question, but we could go in that same order we just followed. So Savage Joy, if you'd like to start that one off, do you have hope in any form whatsoever for this Biden administration?
No. And not to be defeatist, and my name is Joy, so I'm supposed to be like, but no. And another day, I'm so glad I didn't vote for that douche canoe. No shame on anyone who did. It's personal choice, but my God, I don't do the whole move Biden left thing. I feel like if we were holding our votes hostage and saying, you better support this or we won't even vote for you, and he didn't move, right now, what do we have? We have nothing. I mean, we can't, we have no leverage. That was the most leverage anyone could possibly have. And it didn't work. So at this point, do I trust him? God, no. Especially because he takes money from the same people we're trying to take on. I think if Medicare for All does pass with fingers crossed. I think it is up to we the people and representatives. Whether, I mean, I'd prefer it not go state by state, but if that's how it happens, what are you going to do? At least if one state passes it and they see, how advantageous it is, maybe others will. But I think it's, as far as looking at Biden and his cabinet, no. I mean, except, chairman of the Senate Budget Committee. But other than that, no.
Cool. Yeah. You guys, you can answer also. Take however long you'd like to answer that question.
Okay. So I'm glad she wasn't too optimistic, because I'm going to be honest, I'm definitely not. Only because at the end of the day, something that really always guides my research and has been most effective is obviously following the money. So we don't talk about enough, and this is another thing with DSA I think that they should be more open about to their members, who pretty much all support, well, obviously Medicare for All, but forcing the vote. But something that should be explained more is the role of lobbyists. I mean, we all know what lobbyists do, but the massive amount of power that they have over politicians, obviously like Nancy Pelosi, in the healthcare industry, big pharma, biotech now. COVID's really changed a lot of what's going to come, but those interests have huge influence. At the end of the day, they are the ones that call the shots. So I'm going to be doing some research in an article in the next couple of weeks talking about the trends that happened with healthcare stocks when Bernie was doing well, before obviously he was out, and then what happened after. But for me, that's really been the best indicator. As much as I hate that, that's the world that we live in. Money rules everything. So if you follow the money, or you look at the stock market to kind of figure out what's going to happen, what they're anticipating, because if this is billions of dollars, they're not just going to throw it around for anybody. So that's really why I don't see things change. But what I want to happen is for these politicians to have to be forced to explain that, because you don't really ever hear them talking about it. I mean, they'll say a few things like, big money, big special interest, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, they're not changing anything. I want them to be forced to explain that. I want them to, and I know that's a big ask, but that's the kind of person I am. Because if you get to the core of the problem, the root of it, that's then only how you can change it. Because you're gonna hear the typical arguments like, well, people will lose their insurance or their doctors if you go for a Medicare for all option. But that's just a excuse out of the rule book. At the end of the day, it's the lobbyists and that big money that's calling the shots. So that's my reasoning for saying no, because Biden, Pelosi, they're beholden to that. And the last thing I'll say is, Biden, I've been looking at a lot of his plans, like a lot of the details are always in the fine print, and his sites are far larger than just this country. Take that for how you want it to. So on his agenda, it's not going to be the American people first. It's going to be just a larger transnational kind of agenda, and that's not necessarily going to work for a lot of the people that want Medicare for all. And I'll get into that later on, but that was my long answer. My short answer is no, I don't see it.
And all good points, very, very strong points. Joe, before we get to your answer, Justin B., who dropped that very generous super chat, the message didn't go through for some reason, but Justin asked, how can anyone in the DSA be registered with the Democratic Party? Shouldn't they know better? Here's the thing, Justin, like we have to be the ones to wake people up. And a lot of people don't know how bad the Democrats are. A lot of people think that the Democrats really are fighting for all of us. And I don't think it's so much as them ascribing to the leaders of the Democratic Party and ascribing to their ideologies so much as it is them having a misunderstanding of who those people are and what they're doing. So, yeah. So, Joe, question to you now. Yep. Do you have any hope? Any hope whatsoever?
None. And to kind of go along with what Aly was saying, there was a group from Staten Island about almost 30 years ago that had a classic hip hop tune. And it said, cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar bill, y'all. Which goes exactly to your point. Follow the money. Follow the money. But Jackson, part of the reason why I don't have any hope for Joe Biden is because he gave a speech to a bunch of people at Wall Street and he said nothing will fundamentally change. Nothing will fundamentally change. And I'm going to take his word for it because if he says nothing will fundamentally change, okay, he's not going to go ahead and do anything about giving everybody health care. And Savage Joy, something you said, hey, you know what? We have leverage. That was the last bit of leverage that we had. I think I agree with you with that respect, because I do think that was the last bit of leverage that we have politically. But I think we have leverage outside of politics. And what I've been advocating for the better part of almost a year now, since this pandemic has taken place, is general strikes. We need to shut this country down. We need to shut this entire thing down for as long as necessary. What's happening right now with those produce workers in the Bronx, and my very first job that I ever had when I was 14 years old was working at a produce store. And there is nothing more, I wouldn't say nothing, but the physical demands that are put on your body when you have to take cases of fruit out of a tractor trailer and bring them into a storage locker that's refrigerated. No, oh God, no, never again. So workers' strikes. We need strikes. We need boycotts. We need sit-ins. We need to actually mobilize the working class of this country, not only intra-industry, but inter-industry, to force our politicians to give us what we want. So that's the leverage that I think we have. What I would like to see happen is we need a bunch of people like a Christian Smalls, but in every city and in every industry across the country. Mm-hmm. That's what we need in order to really force the issue for not only Medicare for All, but some of these other issues that are not only just progressive, but quite honestly, just basic human rights issues that realistically shouldn't be attributed to a political party or anything else. They're human rights issues. We should have the right to work. We should have the right for housing. We should have the right for healthcare. We should have the right to unionize. These are all things that are human rights. We shouldn't be ascribing these to a political party just for the sake of, hey, I'm a Democrat, or hey, I'm a Republican. It's whack. Stop that. You know, we should be able to live our lives the way we should live it. And if we're not afforded that opportunity, then we should sit out, strike until we get what we want.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'm going to flip the order around for the questions here, and I'm going to ask you all individual questions. Joe, given that you think that, you know, strikes and unionized labor, and probably, I would assume, I'm putting words in your mouth now, but like organizations banding together and forming broad coalitions to fight for policies is the best way of actually achieving successes in this political fight for Medicare for All. How do you feel about the fact that so many of these organizations like DSA, like National Nurses, all of these groups were absolutely silent during the Force the Vote movement? And do you think that in February or early March, whenever the House and the Senate reintroduce the new Medicare for All bill for this session of Congress, do you think that those same groups are going to be silent then, when all of the same actors on our side, the same people who are calling for a vote on the policy that they will have just introduced, do you think all of those same groups are going to be silent insofar as not advocating for the same politicians who just introduced this Medicare for All proposal and bringing it to a House floor vote? Because I'm very, very concerned that could happen, and that is the single easiest way to put out the fire that has been newly stoked in this ongoing critical fight to bring Medicare for All to a vote in the House and Senate.
Yeah, you know, I think. You know, I think the real problem that we have with a lot of these unions is they want the credit for something that should, quite honestly, be thankless work. And I hope that makes sense, because if you're having to constantly argue with people about stuff that you should already have, then you shouldn't be. Come on, it doesn't make any sense to do that. And what I need for the politicians to do is actually represent the people that the electorate said they wanted to have them represent. So if there's a bunch of nurses or doctors or certain labor unions or certain left-leaning organizations, or quite honestly, any organization that's willing to support Medicare for All, then the politicians should be working with these groups and actually meeting with them and saying, hey, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do with this because we represent you. We support this. We support this. If for anybody that's ever watched any of the Star Trek movies, it was Star Trek Part 3, and there was a scene in the movie where Spock is in this tube and Captain Kirk is on the outside of it. And Spock says to Captain Kirk, he says, logic dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And then Captain Kirk looks at him and says, or the one. That's what we need to have more of. We need to have people that are in the government that actually represent us. And the more we don't have that, and the more that we have this fracturing of people who want Medicare for all, and the divide between the people who want Medicare for all and the divide in the people in the government who actually have the political leverage to execute the policy, then there's going to be cold water dumped on that fire that we're stoking right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All good points. And I guess all we can do is just continue to pressure them to help us, cause a ruckus and stir some shit in Congress and get the people who we know don't really represent our interests, maybe force them into doing so. I mean, that's the only thing we can do right now. And that leads me to Aly, someone who's been doing a lot of coverage on the DSA's ongoing battle, like infighting, maybe you could call it, surrounding whether or not their organization should be supporting the Force the Vote movement, supporting a movement to actually force Medicare for All to a vote. So I guess my question for you, Aly, is like, maybe if you could get a brief synopsis of like what has taken place thus far internally for the DSA in this Medicare for All Force the Vote fight, your coverage of it all. And do you think that in the coming months leading up to late February, early March, do you think that they will have the infrastructure to respond to this what is going to be hopefully like a turning point in the movement for Medicare for All when they reintroduce Medicare for All in the House and Senate? Do you think that the DSA by that time will have an infrastructure that will allow their actual members to speak about the need to fight for Medicare for All?
So I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. I realistically don't see them having the entire infrastructure kind of built up by then. I will give them credit. This past weekend, believe it was the DSA Medicare for All group. That's the other thing about DSA. There's so many different groups operating within just one of the organizations. So I've tried to learn a lot, but it's a lot to keep up with. But anyway, they did have a meeting over the weekend and they were discussing a lot of restructuring strategies. So they're trying. A lot of what I really wanted to focus on when I first started was exploring how the members felt versus the leadership. And when you look, the leadership, and I'm talking about at the top, the national DSA, because a lot of the times, like in Chicago here, the Chicago DSA runs completely separate, but they're still under the umbrella of DSA. So with the national organization, they were almost completely removed from it. And I listened in on this call where it was the healthcare health workers collective meeting, and they were discussing Force the Vote and how it was possible that they took a vote on it, and it was like over the holidays. It sounds scattered coming from me because frankly, they didn't really have an organized strategy on how to make votes in a very quick manner. Mm-hmm. An email was sent out asking members to vote on whether they should endorse it officially or not. And I believe it was just a few people that actually opened the email. So that was another reason that then the national said that they didn't want to vote on it. So there was all different kinds of aspects, and you can check all this out in my articles too. Because what I will say is that the members themselves, as things were progressing, as far as like Force the Vote and everything going on with Jimmy Dore, those conversations started to really go on in their internal Slack channels. And so I was just watching, obviously, and There were plenty of people who've been really working hard to get Medicare for All, just going forward within the DSA, getting doctors to sign. They've got like petitions. I believe that one of them, like it was like really quick, like 2,000 signatures, like very quickly. So there's tons of momentum in it. And then you saw the members asking on Slack, where's the leadership? Why aren't we doing anything about this? And then they would be met with kind of just cold responses, pretty much saying, hey, you don't need to attack us. And it was that kind of tone issue that came up. And that's where things really devolved, because you had members saying, look, you don't have to focus so much on the force the vote aspect as much as like, why aren't we doing this? Why are we not collectively moving forward? And nobody could really give an answer. So that was when the leadership was like, okay, we should probably get a handle on this. And, I know he's a controversial figure, but Jimmy Dore, he was a factor in it. And that was what irritated me and kind of prompted me to write that first article, because it was the tone. I'm always saying like we shouldn't tone police, but I was kind of appalled at some of the leaders' justifications for not really even caring about what force the vote was. Like, if there's something on your platform that's being discussed outside of your group, you'd probably want to know what they were saying. And a couple of them were almost irritated that they'd had to be bothered by listening to Jimmy Dore. And, I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of the like kind of identity-centered politics, not because I don't think it's, the message is wrong, but because sometimes it can exclude people that maybe have a good idea. So I was really frustrated to hear that somebody referred to Jimmy Dore as, he's a white man, hetero white man, we can't listen to him. That's, have your opinions on that. That's totally fine. We could go into that all day. But on this issue, if he's helping that cause move forward, why not talk about it? And then that prompted me to kind of learn a little bit more about what a movement has to look like in order for DSA to endorse it. And they were not really backing it officially because it didn't involve labor unions, which that's fine. That's, that's a big tenet of their organization. And also it does not necessarily encourage people to join DSA. And that I was like, okay, so like, let's just be frank here. Like from the leadership's point, and I mean all the way at the top, they're not going to come out about it because it's not necessarily a movement to get people to join DSA. And I get it, because they are a dues paying member, organization. They want people to join.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that begs the question, well, this is a crisis we're in. If that's going to be your reasoning, then how are you better than any of the other people sitting in Congress who won't even talk about it, because it's for profit again. So I just really wanted to expose that as far as like how a lot of the leaders were making decisions, I mean, of course they wanted to get the go ahead from people they've elected, like AOC. They won't really come out and say that, but a lot of the justification for not supporting it was because they'd not heard from people like AOC. So again, it's just kind of like you can't really talk out of line in DSA on a lot of these issues. You can't really go against the norm, and that was kind of what prompted me. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of months, because a lot of what Jimmy Dore did, a lot of just all of us talking about this, did prompt DSA to try to like at least organize and like figure out some kind of system moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be very quick, and that's just kind of how DSA is. So again, my intention was never to trash DSA members. I know a lot of people in it that do the work on the ground, especially locally. My intention was more to kind of give them an understanding of what's going on in their own organization, because the way that it operates, it's just very complex, and I'm all about transparency. So I think now is a better time than ever to just kind of come clean about their intentions. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's pretty much how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone actually were to read your articles, anyone who has read your articles knows that like you're not trying to like attack them. You were trying to, I think, and I'm might be putting words in your mouth here, but in my eyes, you are trying to expose the flaws within the infrastructure of the DSA. You have dues paying members whose voices are not being heard. And even when they are supposed to be technically heard, when they're doing these votes via email and stuff like that on whether or not they should officially endorse force the vote, the leadership within DSA is just like, okay, we know the overwhelming majority of you just voted to endorse force the vote, but like not enough of you voted, even though we didn't have like a clear like a guideline on how many people we had to vote to make this official. So we're just not going to count it. We're just not going to count
We're
it.
not doing it right.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
No,
So I
no.
mean, it's also unfortunate about the fact that everything literally takes forever there, and they probably won't be ready to have an infrastructure if they do ever have an infrastructure to, I guess, have membership be heard in a quick manner for February when this is.
One last thing I was going to say, I will say that they did get a ton of new members within the last year, definitely after George Floyd, but again, I don't want to act like I'm completely innocent. I mean, when I find something, I definitely want to go after it. And I was like, okay, there's some kind of selfish actors in this movement, and I want to expose them because there's nothing I can't stand more than these like fake platitudes being put out on social media. And then when you find out behind the scenes, there's really nothing going on. How are you any better than the people you're claiming to fight? And so one more thing, and then I'll be done. But another thing I found interesting that was kind of exposed was that, I knew that like if you're working with the DSA, you're still technically in the Democrat Party. And that was a huge thing as far as why I think the national leadership would not endorse it, because at the end of the day, it's still funneling into the Democrat Party. The DSA literally isn't operating outside of the Democrat Party. So they can say some things, but if they were that big of a threat, I don't think they would be allowed to be there. And I know that there's different strategies and they're playing more of a long game, but people are fooled sometimes into thinking that the DSA and DSA endorsed people are operating outside of the Democrat Party. They're not. So
yeah, common misconception.
Yes.
Common misconception, even by some people who are paying dues.
Yeah,
common misconception.
Yeah.
Savage Joy, before we get to you, I want to say a big thank you to Justin B again for the very generous donation. Justin says, vote them all out, make Medicare for all a hard line with no exceptions. Just as we asked the squad to use their leverage, we must promise to use our leverage and not vote for these people again.
Yep.
Big facts. Big facts.
Yep.
I mean, I'm done with the liars. I think we're all done with the liars. And the only way that, in my eyes, the only way that we can really combat the liars within the Democratic Party is if we have truth tellers outside of the Democratic Party holding them accountable. I think a lot of us can probably agree on that. Thank you also to where is it? Louise Brooks. How's it going, Louise? Thank you so much for your donation. If you aren't always ready to organize and fight, why the F are you here? I don't know. Some people like to, get their money, get their cash, get their bag at the end of the day. Some people like to get that clout. And I don't think a lot of people actually care about the stuff that they kind of make their living off of, unfortunately, which is very sad and depressing, but it's the truth. I think there's plenty of people who just do what they do in an effort to either get more followers or, get more views or whatever it is, and it's very, very sad, but that's the honest truth. I also want to say a big shout out to Mona, who I think may have already left the chat, but thank you Mona, so much for your donation as well. All right. So Savage Joy, my question to you is, you've discussed a lot in the past, both on the Force the Vote town hall and at the protests in DC. Actually, you've discussed the fact that you've actually met some of these people in Congress right now, the progressives, members of the squad, even who have gone out and knocked doors with you for Bernie Sanders, have personally heard your story and have had very emotional moments with you and have promised to you that they would do everything within their power to fight for Medicare for all and to fight for you specifically. How and I don't want to set you up in a position that's gonna that in a position where you don't want to answer this, but like, I think we'd all appreciate like your honest response of like, how does it feel to know that you had those moments with these people in the squad and the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and now you see them going out and voting for Nancy Pelosi and ignoring this movement and ignoring you now, ignoring you after they posted photos with you. They wrote beautiful captions about you. How does it feel now that they are going out and ignoring you when you were standing outside their office and they voted for Nancy Pelosi knowing exactly what they were doing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting position because, you know, I mean, I interviewed AOC and I was an opening speaker at an event she spoke at, and so I met her and stuff like that. To be 100% honest, and I've said this before, I'm not surprised with AOC. Let's put it that way. When you've been doing this shit almost 4 years, you see a lot of stuff behind the scenes before you hit record. A lot of people don't see, and that's not to say like I loathe her or anything, but I'm just not very surprised with AOC. But yeah, I mean, she was on my show and she straight up said to me, I will fight tooth and nail for Medicare for All. This is one of the reasons I was running, things like that. That was before I became disabled. Then Congressman Ro Khanna, I've interviewed on my show 4 times, all 4 times. We need Medicare for all. Absolutely. I will, die on that hill. We need that. I asked him, I guess it was maybe like, maybe a day or 2 after our town hall. I tagged him in a post, and this is the first time I'm saying this publicly. I tagged him in a post with my video, and I was like, Ro, are you the same Ro who, told me that, you would fight for Medicare for all for, hardcore, and the same one who shared my post about, having to go back to work a day after surgery because I didn't have paid time off and how unacceptable it was, and he unfollowed me. So yeah, that's the first time I said that publicly, but yeah.
Oh my God, holy shit.
Now this is a man, this is a man I have personally emailed with, the Bernie campaign, we have, I have his phone number, we've texted. This is someone who I truly considered an ally. I really did. And I don't agree with him on everything, that's for sure. But he wasn't just a congressman to me. Our relationship, goes back over 3 years. So yeah, I noticed he unfollowed me. And I was like, that kind of sucks. To be quite honest with you, I really doubt he watched my video, which kind of pisses me off. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. It's hard to say, but that one bothered me. But I think what bothered me the most was Rashida, because to me, Rashida has always been the baddest bee in the squad, hands down. She has always been the baddest bee. She was arrested for, protesting, and she was she has voted on her own for things. But, I had that personal experience with her where, I started sharing my story with her. I had just left Pennsylvania, my husband, my family, my home, everything moved to Iowa to campaign for Bernie for 5 weeks. I was incredibly emotional. And, her speech on Medicare for All I just bawled. It touched me so much. And so I had an opportunity to talk to her afterwards. And, I said, this is what I'm going through. And I couldn't even get the words out. And she started crying with me. She was holding me. She was grabbing my hands. She was saying, I'm doing this for you. It's people like yourself. I won't stop. I promise. And I know I'm not like, anyone special per se or whatever, but I think, it made me think, how many other people did she say this to? Like, how many other interactions has she had where, I mean, it's very different when you're in the situation where you are literally becoming disabled as you talk to this rep who you respect and love so much, and they say this to you personally. It's not that I think I'm special and she should have done it for me, but it's the fact that she's probably done things like that with other people. And I'm not saying that she, lied to me and in that moment she was being fake. I think she was very genuine, but at the same time, that got me through so many hard times thinking of that moment. I mean, I'm gonna get choked up just thinking about it. Like, it gave me so much hope, and to see her not even be able to say, you know what, I'm going to hold this vote until we, that one little thing, she was the one that really just, wow, really? Like, really? I thought for sure if one person did it, it would have been her. So again, I don't think she's necessarily a bad person or, has any malice, but I think that she needs to, be more cognizant of, mean her words more. And the fact that her words do, cause reactions of people. For me, this isn't political. This shit is personal. Like, this shit is, you said to my face, you were going to fight for people like me. This is, so there is that absolute sense of betrayal. And it's not just me. I feel betrayed for every other person, who's in this situation. So yeah, that is kind of an interesting circumstance that I'm in, that I've dealt with, interviewed and met a number of the people it involves. Yeah, kind of takes on it's a different animal.
I mean, that was heavy. I don't know how anyone could have watched your segment during the Force the Vote town hall, a segment that I think probably for any person who has like, who's emotional, who has like, normally functioning emotions. Like, I don't know how anyone could have watched that and not felt like such a deep pain with you in that moment. I don't know how anyone could have watched that segment and the response that it would elicit from them would be to unfollow you, to block you out, to ignore you, to stop hearing from you. I'm struggling to like grasp that right now, because like, I know I was tearing up when I watched your segment. I know many people who I've talked to about your segment were tearing up or crying during that segment. I know so many people that were thinking of their loved ones during that segment and thinking about people that they know who are in similar situations. And for someone in his shoes who, has probably heard many a story, unfortunately, like yours, I'm just like baffled a little bit by that would be the response from him. I mean, and who knows, like, who knows is behind the Twitter account at all times, like, who knows, but like, if that is what happened, that is absolutely shocking. And it's not even like you are, it's not like you're coming at it in a disingenuous manner or you're being aggressive. You're just posing a question to someone that you've known for years and who's supposed to be in DC fighting for all of us. I mean, you didn't have to share that, but like, thank you for sharing that story, because that I think that alone puts a lot of things in perspective for all of us. And I think so many of us have like felt so much hope for people like the squad and like other progressives in Congress. And I know when AOC got elected, the night she got elected, it was like, oh shit, this is something. We got one in. You know, everyone was just so psyched. And then now to be met with this is a whole nother world.
I have got some real shit though, not just from congressmen, but I mean, like, God, I've had people say that I'm faking. I've had people say,
like random viewers.
Yeah, like this one person was like, I'm gonna go to Social Security and say that you're a fraud, and I'm like, Social Security hasn't even approved my ass, so I don't know what you think they're gonna do. But I've been getting some real hate. At the protest, I don't know if you saw the screenshot, someone threatened to fight me if I showed up at the protest. I was like, oh my God, like, I just shared my story. Why do you hate me?
There's always haters. You know, you're pissing off the right people. We'll just say that. You're pissing off the right people.
Like, you have no soul at all. If you're like, no, she's faking. I'm like, I told the one girl, I was like, do you want to see footage of me getting eye injections? I can send you the footage and you'll, you know, like, don't question what I'm going through. You have
medical bills, whatever you want. you got your receipts. I mean, that's crazy. But again, it's like, whenever you're doing something like this, whenever you're speaking truth to power, you're going to piss off people. And, you're definitely pissing off the right people, and we're happy to have you on our side here in the fight for justice. So Aly, I want to pose a question to you now, and this is probably going to be the last series of questions, and then I'll each let you say your last words and plug whatever you want to plug. But yes, thank you, Colin, also for reminding everyone to like the stream, drop a like. And let's honestly see, maybe we can get some Sam Cedar viewers in this audience and shift their perspective. So Aly, now I'm losing my train of thought.
Oh no.
I had a question for you about whether or not, here we go. Okay. So the Medicare for All legislation is going to be reintroduced in the House and the Senate in, February, March, sometime like that. But beyond that, depending on what happened, who knows what's going to happen there, right? Like no one could know. But moving past that, in 2 years' time, we are going to have to select another Speaker of the House. I guess this is a two-part question for you. What do you think are the odds that we actually retain our majority in the House? Or I shouldn't say we, because I'm not even a Democrat, but like, what do you think the odds are that the Democrats maintain their majority in the House? And if they do you think that they are the squad, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, is going to put up someone equally or potentially more corrupt than Nancy Pelosi in it would be 2022? What do you think about that?
Well, I can't say for sure. I wish I had all the credentials to be able to predict that. No, I think that somebody in the chat was asking my credentials, and my credentials are like that. I want to tell the truth.
Credentials are Aly is a human being with a heart and a brain, and anyone who meets those credentials deserves healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. That's all, really. No, but what do I think is going to happen? So honestly, like I said, I try to kind of get a sense of what's going on in other circles as well. You don't want to just stay in your echo chamber. And I think as time goes on, as far as with Biden, he's obviously the president, so that administration's going to dictate, the climate in the country. We're already seeing a lot of people that are regretting their vote for Biden. So depending on how that goes, we'll see. Otherwise, I don't know if they'll be able to hold on to it in 2022. Honestly, I don't think so, because what you've got going on, it's very interesting. On the right, you have a lot of the MAGA people that are done with the GOP because they feel betrayed. And you have then the establishment GOP that's trying to kind of rebrand itself away from Trump. But the problem for them is that their base is gone, because for the most part, they are, you know, that MAGA party, and we know how they're not going to waver. So I think we'll have to see what happens. If Biden ends up working more with pretty much anybody that he's not right now, I mean, that cabinet he's got going on doesn't look good for any of us. Maybe some more progressives will get in. But again, I just want to remind everybody that just because somebody says they're progressive, just because they say all the right things, have all the right platitudes, doesn't mean they're going to do anything once they get in. They can only go so far outside of that party line. So let's say, you know, if it's not going to be Pelosi, it's going to be somebody else with just as much interest, I think, depending on who's funding them. So until that, again, is focused on more and exposed, which that's what I want to happen the next couple of years, is to really just expose the process of how this actually works versus how we think it works and how we would like it, you know, to work, versus how electoral politics really works and what's driving those decisions. I don't see anything really changing fundamentally. You know, I don't want to say for sure. I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. But I think this has definitely not been amazing for the squad as far as their support. So they might think that they are not going to have to answer to some issues, but they will. And I'm not talking about, you know, explaining the procedures of how voting in the House works. I'm talking about, why did you still not support this? Or why did you still vote for Nancy Pelosi? And, you know, using that excuse of Kevin McCarthy becoming the speaker is not going to fly anymore. So the more knowledge that people have, you know, that's all I want to do is just share the knowledge. I just direct people most of the time to the source, because don't take my word for it. Just go to the source. They'll tell you right there. It's kind of amazing to me. You know, a lot of people really don't research much, and that's fine. But like, you know, don't get angry at people who do, and come up with information that you might not like. So I you know, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. I'm just kind of sick of hearing the constant, well, it's the Republicans' fault. It's the Republicans' fault. Well, you guys all have power now, so let's see what you can do with it. But so far, I'm not impressed with Biden. I'm definitely a cynic, though, because I think since probably like 2016, if not before, I didn't believe any of them anyway. It was actually back in like 2011 when I found out Obama was like drone king. I was crushed. So then after that, I was just kind of like, well, let's just see what they actually do instead of what they say. So we will see.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people definitely value your opinion. So
Thank you.
I don't disagree with you either. Like, I'm going to be honest. I think we could get 10, 20, 30 more members of the squad, and they would still tell us, they're like, no, we don't have enough. We
can't
swear.
do it. We
Please continue those donations to Justice Democrats, by the way. We'll get there soon. We'll get there soon.
And just be nice. And just, we've got this. It's like, just stop. We don't have time for that anymore. Just stop. So yeah.
No, for sure. So thank you for your insight there. And I do want to say a quick thank you to Jillian Morrison, who just donated a very generous, that's 20 pounds. I got it right this time. Okay.
That's pounds.
I definitely didn't just cheat on my screen that's over here. I have a problem with my euros versus pounds. They look very similar, the symbol. Nina Turner interview on Status Coup pretty much said she'd force the vote. She'd be the real mama bear in Congress. Is she running to maintain momentum, or her profile to ultimately defect to the People's Party as first elected official? It's a good question. First of all, she's been very silent about force the vote thus far. She really, I was under the impression at first that she did speak out in support of it, but then people were like, no, she didn't. Don't include her in the list of people who support it. So I don't know. I guess she didn't, but that's cool if she did say something like that on Status Coup in a recent interview.
Sorry, she follows me, and she did put on one of my things where I was talking to Bree. Anyone who's not for fighting for Medicare for All is, you know, whatever's. And it was a post about force the vote, and she put herself in there. So I think she may not have said it, but she, you know. Yeah, I think she's down with it.
I I really wish she did, you know, what was more vocal about force the vote if she supports it. But like, she is probably one of the only people that I understand the situation she's in if she honestly feels like she can't, because she is running a campaign for Congress at the moment. It's a special election, and I in her scenario, I mean, you know, like, I think people need to be speaking out about this and speaking out about Medicare for All right now. But she wasn't voting, and if she's like kind of nodding at the fact that she supports this movement, in my eyes, she's the one person who can kind of slide by with just that. Although her lack of discussing force the vote has you know, made me a bit curious, we'll say, in the past. And then will she switch to the People's Party? I don't know. Nick Brana, I think I've asked that to Nick Brana in the past, and Nick was kind of like, we see Nina as a friend of the People's Party, and who knows? So there's your answer to that question. I don't think we'll really know. It's up to her to decide what she does. And also, thank you so much to, I love this username, Gosh Darn the Tone Police, for your $10 super chat as well. I don't see a message with it, but thank you for supporting independent media. Continuing on now with the discussion at hand. Joe, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk Libby, Montana.
Let's talk
Libby, Montana, because like I had no idea what, where, or like, what or where Libby, Montana was before I met you. And I didn't know what was going on in Libby, Montana. And it was pretty funny when you came up to me at the protest and we started talking with Colin and we were talking about Libby, Montana, and you were explaining it to me. And I don't think Colin had heard about it either. But then we were talking about it and we're like, this is incredible. We should leverage this and use this precedent that's been set in Libby, Montana. And you're going to talk about what exactly that precedent is in a second.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, like, Lee Camp just like showed up out of nowhere. And he's like, did someone say Libby, Montana? And like, we all started talking about it. But I was like, I can't believe I didn't know about this. This is incredible. So Libby, Montana, give everyone the synopsis, because this is amazing shit. If you haven't listened, which I hope you have been listening, but if you haven't listened to a moment of this video thus far, maybe you're cleaning the house or you're making some dinner right now, listen to this moment right here, because like, this is a very, very important conversation that needs to be had. And actually on Tuesday, I'm going to be having Lee Camp on the show to talk about this in greater detail. So you are the first person I heard this from, Joe. Libby, Montana, let's talk.
Yeah, so what it is, it's Section 1881A alpha of the Social Security Act. Now, what that did, it was an addendum to Section 1881 of the Social Security Act. Now, Section 1881 of the Social Security Act basically says, hey, you know what? If your kidneys are completely torn up, you get Medicare. And the reason people get Medicare is one of three ways. You either get Medicare because you're 65 years of age or older. You get it because you have a disability that Medicare says you can have, or your kidneys are completely destroyed. So those are the three ways people get Medicare in the United States. Now, what Section 1881A of the Social Security Act did, it amended Section 10323 of the Affordable Care Act. And what it did, it said, hey, you know what? If you get bodily injury because of an exposure to an environmental hazard, you get Medicare coverage. So what happened it's actually Lincoln County, Montana. Libby's the biggest city in the county, but what happened, there's a vermiculite mine by the W.R. Grace Company, and there's a whole lot of people in the county that all of a sudden showed up with asbestosis and mesothelioma. So when the Affordable Care Act was being legislated back in 2008, 2009, Montana Senator Max Baucus, who was the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, who was against single-payer health care. And
Republican or Democrat? Sorry.
It's a Democrat.
Democrat.
He was a Democrat that was against single-payer health care. He had a public hearing, and a bunch of people from nurses and doctors. One of the people was a lady named Dr. Margaret Flowers, who was the Green Party candidate for the governorship of Maryland, I think back in 2016 or in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. She actually got arrested along with 10 other people that were like, hey, look, we're fighting for single-payer healthcare. And Max Baucus, a Democrat, said, hey, you know what? Get these people out of here, send them to jail. And he's on the mic saying this. So, but when Max Baucus's constituents were all of a sudden having trouble breathing, it was okay. Hey, let's go ahead and get them Medicare. So the people in Lincoln County, Montana, what happened is the government said, okay, we'll go ahead and take care of all of you. And the reason they got it is because of what's called an emergency declaration. And the emergency declaration comes from a specific act that's under the Environmental Protection Agency. And that emergency declaration basically says that there has to be a public health threat or an actual hazardous substance that's released into the environment. Well, we've been under a threat of public health since January 27th of last year. HHS Secretary Alex Azar put it up. You can look at it on the internet. So everybody in Lincoln County, Montana, and it's the farthest northwestern county in the state of Montana. It's right next to Idaho, and it's bordered on the north by the Kootenai region in British Columbia. So if you've ever been to Shambhala Music Festival, and I played that years ago, we're talking places like Salmo, Castlegar, Trail, Nelson, which is a beautiful city. So that kind of south central area of British Columbia, that's where it is. So everybody in the county received Medicare Part A, which is inpatient hospital coverage. They also got Medicare Part B, which is outpatient hospital coverage. They also got the opportunity to enroll in Medicare Part D, which is prescription drug coverage. And if you're a low wage earner, there's a specific program that Medicare has called Extra Help. That is the actual name of the coverage, where they'll help you pay for your prescriptions, they'll help you pay for your co-payments, they'll help you pay for your co-insurance. And that specific coverage is worth up to $5,000 a year. So there's precedent for this, because when you talk about a health hazard, I mean, we're talking secondhand smoke, we're talking, certain different types of pollutants. And I would certainly think an airborne virus would be a environmental health hazard. If it wasn't an environmental health hazard, we wouldn't be walking around with masks on our faces and being told to be socially distant or physically distant 6 feet away from each other. So what I'd like to, and again, this sort of legislation, this could be done with executive order. Joe Biden on his first day in the White House last week could have been like, okay, yeah, all right, figure the student loans. Here's a check for $1.9 trillion. Everybody's student loans are taken care of. Okay, and hey, guess what we're going to do? We're going to cover everybody that's been infected with COVID. Everybody. And he could just do this just for COVID, because the legislation in Section 1881 Alpha, it gives you if you read the policy, and it's only about 4 pages, it's not overly dense healthcare legislation. But when you read it, they're talking specifically about Lincoln County, Montana in Section 1881A of the Social Security Act. But in the act, it also gives the people to have their own pilot programs. So if you can create your own pilot program for people that have lead poisoning, if you could create a pilot program for people that have lead poisoning in Flint, Michigan. You could do it for lead paint in Baltimore, Maryland, the city I grew up in, where there's a massive lead paint issue. You could have done this for communities that have pesticide issues, where people are growing up with birth defects or soil contamination or water contamination. And because it worked in Lincoln County, Montana, and everybody there has coverage there for the rest of their lives. There's no waiting period. You don't even have to have had a job that paid into the system to get the coverage. Everybody gets it for the rest of their lives. So this is something that Joe Biden could easily do. He could go ahead and say, hey, executive order will cover everybody that has COVID. And in order to get Medicaid, you have to be living in the country for at least 6 months. Well, guess what? Nobody has left the country because nobody would allow us into their countries. So, and the coverage area is the United States. So everybody in the country is either directly or indirectly affected by COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So if you go ahead and you create a pilot program for this, you would at minimum have to cover the testing for free. And then you would easily go ahead and say, let's cover the vaccines for the people who have already been infected. So if you go ahead and you cover the vaccines for people who have been infected, you would by default have to cover everybody that has not been infected. That's like cleaning your apartment and then vacuuming your floor, but then not cleaning the table. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense to do it that way. If you're going to go ahead and cover the people who have been infected, you would have to cover the vaccinations for the people who have not been infected. And at that point, you're going to have to say, hey, you know what? We need to make sure that we have some sort of reassurance to make sure that everybody is healthy. So you're just going to have to cover everybody's healthcare issues at that point anyway, because regardless of COVID-19 or not, there's going to be other COVID-related illnesses as a result of this pandemic that you're going to have to cover further on down the line. So this whole Section 1881 Alpha of the Social Security Act, this is something that Joe Biden could be doing. So in addition to forcing the vote, which I am firmly 1 billion% in favor of, I love having the fervor of people being in the streets and marching for something and fighting for something. Just like me, Jackson, I was standing 5 feet away from you, holding up the sign, "Don't drop the ball, Medicare for all." I love that, and I thank you for that. But in one hand, you have to have that willingness to fight. And the other hand, you have to have some sort of effective policy, especially policy that has precedent. And there is precedent for this. So what I would like to see members of the squad, or it doesn't have to be a member of the squad. It could be anybody in Congress, anybody fighting for this. Because what kind of sociopath looks at their constituents and says, you know what, vote for me, but I'm not going to give you health care. What sense does that make? No. This is something that should never be Democrat nor Republican. This is, hey, look, there's precedent for it. There is a bunch of people that all of a sudden had trouble breathing as a result of an environmental health hazard. The senator actually did what he said he was going to do, which was take care of his people and give them health care. Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of situation that, again, Obama could have done this with people in Flint, Michigan, instead of going like this and saying, "Oh, I don't pull any stunts," and taking a fake sip of water in front of a room of black people, and then all of a sudden they were like, "Whoa, hold on now." He betrayed all of them. He could have said, "Hey, you know what? If this works for a bunch of white folks in Lincoln County, Montana," and then, by the way, there are exactly 12 black people in Lincoln County, Montana. 12. I've looked up the demographics. If it worked out in Lincoln County, Montana, and they can all get health care, you should be doing the same for the same people in Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., New York City, where they've got lead in the pipes and lead in the water there, Washington, D.C., wherever. This entire country should have Medicare for all, and this legislation, this act, should be executive order. Biden could have gone down the street to Staples, picked up a couple of pens, signed it in, done deal. And then this entire country wouldn't have to worry about being bankrupted because of lack of health care. Because the way this healthcare system in the United States, it's either go fund me, go to hell, or go away and die. And there's no way in the richest country in the world with a GDP of 21 or 22 trillion dollars should be bankrupted by medical debt. And the guy that's in charge of not being able to discharge medical debt is Joe Biden. He supported the laws that prevented discharging medical debt and student loan debt. So again, the two things that Joe Biden could have done before the seat at the Resolute desk even got warm: student loan forgiveness, Medicare for all under Section 1881 Alpha of the Social Security Act.
Yeah, and I just want to say something really quick, if you don't mind. And I mean, because especially having that precedent, that legislator, something to actually call back to, that pushes them more to have to explain why they won't really go for it. Oh, is it because the hospital funding is that why? Because stocks are going to go down? I want them to have to explain the real motivations behind what they say. And I don't care if that's being mean. I don't care. That's what they're there to do. If you're not there to do that, then stop telling people that. We'll figure it out without you. A lot of the people that say, I've talked to actually a couple of friends that, they're doctors, and I've asked what's the argument against it? Because I like to get all sides of it. And their biggest thing is that if you have Medicare for all, that could potentially delay payments to hospitals. So again, it's all about money, because right now, and what Biden's going to propose is that public and private option, but the thing is, you can go to a lot of doctors' offices and they won't take Medicaid. So what do you do? Or Medicare, anything? They won't take any kind of government insurance. So you're back then to square one. So
Right.
I just wanted to touch on that. It's great to have that precedent to refer to, because again, they can't use some of the tired excuses that they keep using.
There's no excuses. There's no excuses. And you know what? And you know what, Aly? You bring up a good point. And you know what's mean? What's mean is when Congress people like Ro Khanna look at Savage Joy and say, "Hey, I'm going to fight for you," but then unfollow you. That's mean.
Yeah.
That's mean.
Yeah, it's mean. That's what motivates me to do all of this. I don't like liars. I've seen politicians. I helped my dad campaign for Democrat politicians all the time in high school, and there was one, Joe Donnelly, and I would be with my dad, and Joe Donnelly would just be speaking to this group, and I'm like, he doesn't mean anything he's saying, does it? And my dad's like, that's politics. So, you know, I hate that. I hated hearing those stories, and I am a realist, and I don't like to see people get hurt, and I don't like to see people put so much faith over and over and over again into these people that make empty promises when, you know, for the most part, all of us want the same things and figure it out without them. So I might sound extreme, but I like action. I don't like words. So.
What's extreme is the fact that we have Democrats who aren't really willing to giving us health care. I mean, let's face it. The Democratic Party of the United States will be a right-wing party in a lot of other countries.
Yeah,
the right wing of the United States political system is unspeakable. It's unspeakable. And when we talk about this whole healthcare, Medicare for All situation, the objective that I want to make sure everybody understands, the objective is not health insurance. That's not the objective. The objective is healthcare. The objective is healthcare. I mean, I'm 44 years old, and I remember when I got my driver's license when I was 16. I wasn't pumped up about having to buy health insurance. I wasn't like, yeah, I can't wait to buy health insurance and car insurance. No, I was like, yo, I want to drive. I want to go to my friends to the movies. I want to go to buy records at the Reisterstown Road Plaza. I wasn't concerned about car insurance because the objective is to drive. It's not about making sure you have the insurance. And right now, I'm not excited. Having conversations about health insurance doesn't excite me. Having conversations about health care does. And to use that car analogy, right now, there's a whole lot of people in the United States that are driving without a seatbelt. And that seatbelt is health care. And again, if our politicians don't care about us, then we should let them know that, hey, you know what? We are not going to vote for you. We will primary your ass. Get out. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And there was was there a lot of good analysis in your in your answer to my question, Joe. I mean, like that, I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, you blew my mind again. I think you probably blew the minds of everyone on this panel and in the chat. And like, we're only going to have like a few thousand people that watch this stream. Imagine the people who live in West Virginia that have open pit coal mines. Imagine the people living in New Mexico that have open pit uranium mines that are just left out there, and then they're causing this incredible level of toxicity in their communities. Imagine the people who have to deal with oil spills in Kern County, California. Imagine people all over the United States who are dealing with these environmental exposure risks that are having real impacts on their health. Imagine if they knew what you just said about the fact that there is precedent for this in the United States to get basically Medicare for all. If your community is suffering from an environmental exposure that could actually, pose a great risk to your health. And like you also said, we're all facing a collective environmental exposure with this healthcare crisis. Imagine the 400,000, 500,000 people in this country that are unhoused right now due to our government's inaction. That's an environmental exposure. That's at their hands that this is happening. Like, there's just so many examples in which we could actually leverage this precedent that has been set to ensure healthcare for all people. And I love it. And so many people just are not familiar with what happened in Libby, Montana. And what was the county of it?
It was Lincoln County, Montana. Lincoln County, Montana. Yeah, there are three big cities in Lincoln County. There's Eureka, there's Troy, and then there's Libby. And the
Okay.
reason why people mention Libby so much is because the vermiculite mine that poisoned that entire county is the link. Libby is the closest city to the mine.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, but this Section 1881A, how come no? Again, and thanks to Jimmy Dore for bringing up the force to vote. But how come nobody? And again, how come none of these people in Congress, none of their staffers said, "Hey, you know what? Hey, why don't we use the Section 1881A? And you know, if we don't like Jimmy Dore's tone, or we want to tone police Jimmy Dore, but we want to look good and actually fight for something, why don't we use this?" There are congressional staffers that have PhDs in political science that are, you know, and some of these staffers that have master's degrees in public policy and public administration that are really smart people that go to really good schools.
Yep.
I went to school with some of these people.
And
come on, think about this.
The funniest part is like, and after this, we're gonna ask Joy a question and wrap things up here. But the funniest part is like all of the people who are like, you know, I've brought up Sam multiple times tonight, Sam Cedar, but like, it's not just Sam. It's not just Sam. I know he's like, he's the person that everyone's like cracking jokes about right now because he did something respectable. He went out and actually had a conversation rather than sitting behind a phone screen and just tweeting about and criticizing people who are actually fighting for healthcare. He actually tried to have a conversation. So credit where credit is due for that. Even though
Ryan Grimm.
30 minutes. What was that?
Ryan Grimm.
Well, yeah, Ryan Grimm. Yeah. Cough, cough. But no, like for real, if the question, and obviously like it's Bree's show, it's Virgil's show, but like the question I would have posed back to Sam when he was like, you know, I it's just a strategic difference. I just don't support this strategy. I support alternatives to the strategy. The question I want to pose back to all of them is like, what fucking strategy, Sam? What strategy do you support? Because you're virtually silent when everyone asks you that exact question. Do you support forcing the executive action? Do you think Congress should band together? Do you think the progressives, the squad should band together and threaten to threaten to not fund the government? Do you think they should threaten to not fund the military? Do you think the senators who are progressive should threaten to not approve any of Biden's cabinet picks? Like, you need to support some strategy. You just can't say that you support Medicare for all, but you don't actually support a pathway to getting there. So what's your strategy? Because there are a handful of ways that we could force the executive action or we could force the vote, but personally, I kind of like the idea of forcing the executive action better because then we don't even have to deal with the vote. We can just force the executive action and there's already the precedent there. So what is your strategy? These people are silent. These people are cowards. They just want to look pretty and say that they support these nice policies, but they don't actually want to fight to get them implemented. And that's what drives me absolutely fucking insane and why I can't even handle these people anymore. Watching that discussion just blew my mind. I'm sorry, but like these people are so dumb and they are cowardly, to be quite honest.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I can't even deal with it anymore. But thank you so much for like dropping knowledge on all of us right now because it really is something that we don't hear a lot about. You don't see Jacobin writing articles about, at least to my knowledge, about Libby, Montana. You don't have high school teachers teaching the fact that there is Medicare for all in a community already in the United States. You don't have any of that. So thank you for being a truth teller and for dropping knowledge on all of us there.
Of course.
And I want to take the conversation back to where we started tonight with Savage Joy. When you had me on your show, we kind of briefly touched on how we thought that this forced the vote effort, and at the time we didn't know what was going to happen. We were kind of like, well, they might support it, they might not support it, who knows. I think we both kind of had a guess as to what was going to take place, and we were both right. But you know, one of the questions that I think you asked me or we were discussing was like, if they don't withhold their vote for Pelosi to do the thing that they said they campaigned, on doing, which is fighting for Medicare for all and for not voting for Pelosi without negotiations in return. Like, if they didn't do that, how is that going to affect their careers moving forward? How is that going to affect their base of supporters? And we kind of were just guessing, really, like as to how we thought it was going to impact their support moving forward. And now, not only do we have the answer to that, we also have to look forward to February again, which is something I brought up a few times tonight when they reintroduce Medicare for All legislation in the House and Senate. Are they actually going to force a vote then? Are they going to do anything surrounding executive action? And that's a conversation that I think a lot of us on the left should start to push out. That I'm not speaking for everyone here, but like I personally think that's a brilliant idea. And also the third thing is like 2022 isn't that far away. I know it seems crazy, but it's really not that far away. And you know, they're going to be choosing a new Speaker of the House then, probably, because Nancy Pelosi is probably not going to be there anymore. So how do you think the failure of the progressives to do what they said they were campaigning on to do affected their support? And how do you think if they continue on this vein of choosing to ignore their grassroots supporters, it's going to affect their supporters and their grassroots base moving forward?
I think, you know, the amount of disconnect between comrades of years the past few weeks has been truly heartbreaking. There's a whole lot more AOC stands, like worshipers, than I ever knew existed. You cannot even mention her name without, how dare you? And I guess I didn't realize like it was that serious. So that kind of surprised me. But you know, as far as she goes, I know like, you know, so many of us burners, especially, you know, we were you know, so many donated, knocked doors, everything like that. And I think when she runs again, I think she's going to be lacking a lot of that now. And not even necessarily because people support force the vote, but because she ran on being an activist and she's not. She was, and then she got elected and now she's not. So I see she may be reelected. I'm not sure, but I do not see the kind of support she had before at all. Not a chance. I think, you know, if someone is going to primary any of Progressive Caucus Squad, whatever you want to say, it better be someone to the left. Because if you're going to just put up someone who says the right things, like they're not going to win because they have name recognition. It should be someone to the left, but also, you know, as someone who's interviewed almost 200 grassroots candidates from across the country, I tell every single one, even if you don't win, you have inadvertently pushed the person you are running against to the left because they have to answer for why they don't believe in something. Yeah. So even if, you know, whoever runs against any of them doesn't win, they're going to be on that debate stage and they're going to say, why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? And sometimes that also works as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I definitely see, you know, I see some things like that in the future. As far as Pelosi retiring, she can say whatever the hell she wants. She's a Kissinger person. She's never going to die. She's just going to live forever. And she's like, she has that chromogen or whatever the hell it's called. She's like frozen. She's never going to die. She's never going to retire, like ever. So, but if, you know, if she did, yeah, like some of you guys said, I really don't see anyone so-called progressive taking over. A lot of people try to push for Barbara Lee. I don't get it. She's been saying access to healthcare in her tweets. She endorsed Kamala during the primaries. Like she's she's not who people swear she is. Like, I wish she was, but she's not. So, you know, it'd be great to get someone new, but I have a feeling it'll be someone just as, you know, shitty. So I think, you know, all of this, we're learning that electoral politics is just not the answer to things. It's something that, yeah, get out and vote, yeah, support your candidate, but we do have to do so much more. And I love the idea of a general strike, absolutely. But we have to somehow make sure that it's not just a hashtag. Like, these people who post it 24/7, they need feet in the street. This isn't, you know, some kind of Twitter shit. Like, if you're gonna say it, do it. Like, it's only gonna work if it's huge.
I thoroughly agree. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We see Biden get elected. Everyone, let's go back to normal. George Floyd protests, you know, not happening as much, things like that. No, if we're going to do this shit, we have to do it hard, and we have to do it 50 states, and it's got to be big. I mean, look at the other countries. They're freaking badass punk rockers. They're like, you know what? You looked at us wrong. We're just going to stand in the streets for like 18 days. Like, America needs to learn from that shit. Like, they're so hardcore. Yep. And we need to do that. We really need to do that.
I think
it's going to take like a hardcore organization, and it's going to take a lot of people banding together to make it happen. But I think we can. I think if we get enough people on board, I absolutely think we can. And, you know, a list of demands would be absolute necessity. And if you have people who, you know, are in the streets and they're, you know, people can't open the restaurants, people can't drive the buses, people can't do these things, they're going to have to freaking listen to us. They're not going to have a choice because their whole society is going to be on pause.
Look at India. Look at India. 250 million people in India on strike right now, and they're 6 or 7 weeks deep into their strike right now. They're 6 or 7 weeks deep. Look at what's happening in France. There was protests in France over the weekend again and again. It's not just a bunch of people that are out of work. It's the Gilets jaunes, yellow vest movement, and the Gilets noirs, the black vest movement. They're back in the streets again. There were protests in Amsterdam over the weekend for against anti-COVID lockdown restrictions. Mm-hmm. Same thing in Denmark. Look at what happened in Russia over the weekend.
Yeah,
against Navalny, and Navalny has questionable politics, obviously, but look at that. There were people fist fighting cops in riot gear.
Not only fist fighting. I saw one of those dudes karate kick a
cop in the head. Like it's Street Fighter 2 out here. Are you kidding me? Come on now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Joy, I agree with you. There needs to be a mobilization of people in the streets. We need feet in the streets, plain and simple. This is what we need. Look at, again, there have been protests around the world that we've seen over the past 12 months. There have been protests in Bosnia. There are protests in Georgia. Protests in many different
Venezuela,
Chile, Venezuela, Libya. Look at Libya with Evo Morales and Luis Arce. I mean, we're seeing it all over the world. Look at the protest. I've been to Hong Kong 5 or 6 times in my life. There are still protests taking place in Hong Kong right now. And this time last year, I actually was on tour in Asia. I did a 2-week tour of Asia, and many of the places that weren't in protest the year before, that were under protest now, many of those places are damaged. And I'm like, and I'm watching this on the news. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know where that is. That's Central Train Station, and you go up 4 flights of steps and walk over. I know all that stuff. So it's like, what we're seeing right now is there are people that around the world that are tired of their governments, and they're tired of being lied to by their politicians. And we're seeing, again, more people in the streets globally. And something that I think we need to do in the United States is we need to internationalize this struggle. We need to internationalize this struggle, because this is more than just, okay, hey, you know what, we don't have health care, or you know what, yeah, they're spending $740 billion on the military, but They can't find money to pay our student loans.
Right.
These problems are not just limited to the United States. These are global issues, and the struggle that many people who are in that, I guess, 21 to 25 to 54 years of age demographic, this is global. This is not just the United States. This time last year, I was living unfortunately now my ex-girlfriend in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. The homeless problem in Vancouver is only rivaled by Skid Row in Los Angeles. Go walk up and down Hastings Street or Pender Street or Powell Street or hang out around Oppenheimer Park and you'll see just tent cities everywhere. So this problem that we have right now, again, it's not just local. It's not just about a state or a county level. This is national and this is global. And again, I think the thing we need to do is internationalize the fight for humanity, freedom, equality, and survival.
Yeah, pretty simple asks. And I just want to say to that, the one positive here with Biden is that I think pretty quickly he's going to equally piss off a lot of people. So it's ironic, but maybe Joe Biden's presidency will be the unifying factor. I know that's kind of a pipe dream, but we'll see. That's really, I think, kind of another way to just expose how what we're doing isn't working. So
I think
my fingers.
I think most of his voters would definitely join us in a general strike, but they have brunch plans, so they
got brunch. Stop complaining. They've got brunch.
They got to go brunch.
Come on, mimosa.
I want to say before we wrap things up here, I want to say big thank you to Jay Rosales for the super chat. Keep up the great work, Jackson, and everyone on the panel. Thank you. Colin, thank you so much. You really went off tonight, like 3 donations. Very generous. Thank you. This you said this makes what happened in Flint more heinous because they should have Medicare for all and Obama did nothing.
Obama did nothing except take a fake sip of water.
Yeah.
And, I don't do stunts, but yet he actually pulled a stunt.
Yeah.
Boy.
And also, I'm fine. You see, this is the thing. I'm using a different streaming platform tonight, and it doesn't just isolate all the super chats, which is the only bummer. They go away after a while, so I have to get to them quick. But Snorky 2K came through with the super chat as well. Thank you. Large portion of your car, property, and business insurance is for lifetime care of injuries. That goes away with Medicare for All. Medicare for All lowers costs. That I did not know. Thank you for the insight. Colin did another 2 super chats. I can only find one. I don't remember your other message, so I apologize for that. But the third one was more the reason why I love all of you guys for being the mouths and feet of Force the Vote. Thank you all for this panel. Thank you, Colin, for also being a part of the mouth and feet of Force the Vote. You were there with us. You were there with us in DC. So thank you. Justin B., thank you again for another super chat. We need to call for a general strike on Election Day 2022. Call to make Election Day a national holiday to give power to the people. Wouldn't that be an incredible thing? Then maybe working class people could actually vote and actually have their voices heard. It would be incredible. But I mean, that's like the real thing. It's like, where are our unions when we need them? Where are the organizations when we need them? And I kind of like briefly, I definitely did not dive into it enough to like give it any sort of, justice, but like, there are so many unionized workers across this country that would love to participate in a general strike, but their leadership just, in not in every case, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but a lot of times the leadership of unions does not represent the workers' like dire needs.
Right.
I agree.
And that's just the truth.
Agreed.
Right.
Could you imagine if UPS drivers and FedEx drivers said, you know what, we're not doing anything until it's time, until could you imagine what upheaval that would cause in this country if FedEx and UPS truck drivers, and they are unionized, said, no, we're not doing this. And I would say post office, but technically they can't go on strike because they're public employees, so they can't go on strike.
Absolutely nuts.
But if UPS and FedEx and DHL just said, you know what, yeah, we're not delivering your packages.
Yeah. At this point, the workers themselves leave, but forget the union. Not that unions aren't important, but there are, as we move forward, they're making it harder and harder for unions to have actual power.
Correct.
So that's why, like with DSA, I'll just say this, like one of their core foundations for supporting something is via unions. And I know that a lot of these healthcare unions are now on board. That's what they're going forward with. But if the union shouldn't be the only strategy, because it's not always gonna work. But yeah, I mean, just getting people to really understand it, like make it matter to them, I think is what's going to drive.
Wildcat strikes would be an excellent way to obviously avoid unions, but still have the effect.
What is it?
Strike. A wildcat strike.
I have no idea.
A wildcat strike happens when you have a labor force that goes against the wishes of the labor leadership and decides to go on strike. So a perfect example of a wildcat strike happened during the last NBA season when the Milwaukee Bucks said, hey, you know what? We're not playing tonight. They didn't consult Michelle Roberts, who's the leader of the NBA Players Association.
Okay.
Say, hey, Michelle, can we go on strike? And she said, yeah or no. That wasn't it. The Bucks said, you know what? We're not doing this. And then the Lakers were like, yeah, we're siding along with them. And then Obama went ahead and talked them out of it. You know what I think would have been incredibly effective is if the NBA, instead of playing a game in the bubble, playing the last season in the bubble, said, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're going to sit this one out. And if the NFL's labor leadership and DeMaurice Smith, they could have gone ahead and said, hey, you know what, players, what do y'all want to do? You want to take a knee in the name of Black Lives Matter when Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed still don't have work because they stood up for racial injustice? Or do you want to sit this one out and force these billionaire owners who have political connections to do what the people actually need? That would have been far more effective than seeing who's going to play in the Super Bowl in 2 weeks or see LeBron win another championship. That's the kind of activity that actually needs to happen. Wildcat strikes in addition to actual organized strikes.
I was pretty stoked to see the Lakers take the chip, though. I'm not gonna lie, and it's, you know what, it's gonna happen again this year. I'm calling it.
Lakers.
They're like 13-4. It's fucking happening.
What about
Brooklyn can leave. They can go. No one cares about Brooklyn. It's over. Lakers are winning.
I don't want
but no, for real. Like I totally agree with all of that. And you know, we just had that. Was it a Teamster strike in New York that just took place? But it's like, they were asking for a $1 wage increase. They were asking for healthcare benefits. They were asking for nothing. Yeah. It's like, it's incredible. I love it. But $1 increase in wages. And I do want to say this. Someone in the chat said something about like, oh, there's like local leadership in unions and there's national leadership with unions.
Correct.
That is very true. My comment, and I don't know if you were trying to like, point that out in a sense, like I don't, in reference to my comment on union leadership, but like even local union leadership, which I've worked with a ton of in Orange County, California, even then, like even though it's like that central or that like isolated and that close to the actual workers, even then you have union leadership that doesn't always agree with workers. I'm sure you know that, but I'll also add that like, you don't have to be in a union to help people who are striking. You do not have to be in a union.
Agreed.
You do not have to have ever worked a union job. You don't have to have any of that. In my community, the UFCW Local 324, which are the grocery store workers, like Vons, Ralph's, grocery stores like that. I don't know if East Coast people have those grocery stores, but like those are the major grocery stores here on the West Coast. And they were going on strike for their local, which is like Orange County, Riverside County, and I think San Diego County. And I've never been unionized. I've never worked at a unionized job, but I was out there with them because they're fucking unionized workers. And that's what you do when they threaten to go on strike. You go out and stand with them in the fucking cold and you go and support them at whatever costs you have to face, because those are the people who are keeping this community running. Those are the people who are keeping this country running in the middle of a pandemic. So go out and support unionized workers, striking workers if they're in your community and they're fighting right now. They need your support. They need your support. And I don't mean just like think off the top of your head if you know of a strike in your community. Go to your local paper. Go to your county newspaper. See if, I mean, like, hopefully you have a county or local paper, considering so many of those are like going out of business. But like, that's why these things are important. Go find out if there's striking workers in your community. You can find your we have like the Orange County Labor Federation here. You can find your local unionized coalition and see if they have any updates on their website. Please support these people, because at the end of the day, they're supporting all of you, and they're going to be the ones who are powering this fight to get us things like Medicare for All in the coming years. So, yeah.
And also, I just had politicians on the backside of this. So how come nobody's talking about trying to repeal Taft-Hartley? How come nobody's talking about that? And let's not forget, one of the major acts of legislation that destroyed labor unions is the North American Free Trade Agreement, otherwise known as NAFTA. Karen was a major supporter of that bill, none other than the current president of the United States, Joseph R. Biden Jr.
Yep.
So again, if we're going to go ahead, again, I like having the fervor of, hey, let's fight in feet in the streets, but I also like to have people in the halls of government actually fighting with the other hand. So again, let's talk about trying to repeal Taft-Hartley. Let's talk about trying to repeal NAFTA. Let's talk about that, because NAFTA destroyed unions and sent a whole bunch of good paying middle-class jobs out of the country. If we're going to talk about having jobs, let's have NAFTA come, get rid of NAFTA.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's a long fight, and it's going to, encompass a lot of work, but like it needs to be done, or else there's literally no reason to bring up a child in this country in the future, because you're bringing them up into a world that is like destined for misery, pain, suffering, and failure. That's the truth. It's a hard pill to swallow. But that's the type of tenacity and spirit that we need to have in this fight. Shout out to all my unionized workers in the chat. Also, all of you are shouting out your locals. That's beautiful. And I also want to say, before we do our last words here, I want to say a huge thank you to Mona again for another donation on PayPal. It doesn't come up on our screen here, but we appreciate it. Thank you so much. And to Mona had 2 donations. Now, I don't know if you heard me when I brought up your other one, but thank you, Mona. To Amro Gabriel also, and to Bart Ziegler. So thank you to all of you for donating, supporting the show, supporting our work. That was a beautiful discussion. If you guys would like to add any final words, maybe we could go around in our original order. Joy, if you'd like to start. And then also, important always, where can people follow along? I know I have some of your links, but not all of your links in the description of this video. So maybe if some of our mods could plug some of these links in the chat so people could follow along. If you guys would like to plug any projects you're working on, where they can follow you, et cetera, et cetera.
So you can find me at Savage Joy Marie 1 on Twitter. And my show, well, I have 2 YouTubes. My show is currently on Roar Media Live, ROAR. It's a project, an organization a few of us started to highlight women and people of color who are streamers. Just because, no offense, but there's a lot of white dudes. So we kind of, wanted to start something like that. And so I do shows on there all the time. Lee Camp will be coming on my show next Wednesday as well. I'll be on Ron Placone's show on Tuesday. We're doing 1 show a month. I'll be doing a show with Ryan Knight every month, and a show on the Vanguard every month. You can also go to my personal YouTube, Savage Joy Marie Man, where I have over 300 of my prior shows. So you can subscribe to that. If you want my Shit Lib parody book, I co-wrote with Pat Cody, which Nina Turner said I laughed till I damn cried. It's at savageandpat.com. You can learn more about the book when she interviewed us on her podcast. So you can check that out. And then again, I am doing the new book on healthcare stories. So if you have anything you want to share about, unaffordability or medical bankruptcy, anything whatsoever, the tumultuous process of getting insurance, send your story to healthcareviolence@mail.com. I'm hoping to get at least 50 stories, because I want this book ripe with enough stories, with enough people and places that it hits home.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
and thank you both as well for this awesome discussion.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this discussion. So
So did I.
be sure to follow Savage Joy, support the cause, and I love the idea for your book. I think that's going to be a really good one, and I can't wait to read it. So thank you for all your work. Aly, if you'd like to say any last words and plug where people can follow along.
Yes, I gotta get a different name. I'm kind of like in the process of like kind of centralizing things because I'm a bit scattered. So my Twitter, I think Mona posted it because it's got underscores. I don't know how many. So just go look in the chat. And then my Substack, I think the link is in the description. It's just Aly Alexandra Substack. And then you can also find me. I do some contributing stuff for Hardlands Media. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. In the coming month, I should actually have like YouTube set up. So I'm kind of in transit right now, but you'll be seeing me around. And thank you for having me on. Honestly, I mean, all of you really put the work in. I'm just kind of, I started just kind of an observer, an annoying contrarian who just wants to kind of like expose things. And I've really felt that this issue and just kind of, Jackson, what you've kind of, you and other people have put together has been really amazing because it's not like what drew me to it is that it's not centered around a political party. It's around just forcing the vote. And so it's been awesome to be here and I hope we can do this again. Thank you.
100%. I would love to do that at some point in the future. So we'll keep talking. The one, the only motherfucking DJ Joe Nice.
Well,
I literally have people texting me right now, blowing up my phone, being like, oh my God, I didn't know that. I didn't know about Libya.
Right.
I didn't know about that. Like people are literally reaching out to me right now and being like, tell that man, thank you.
well,
I thought Libby Montana was a person.
no.
I was like,
Yeah.
I probably sounded like a person when I was saying it. I'm like, Libby Montana, great person, great fighter. No, for real though. Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Any last words? And
Yeah. Jackson, first of all, thank you for having me on. Second of all, Aly and Joy, lovely to meet both of you and share this space with you. And Joy, look, you're not alone. We stand with you. Okay, there's a whole lot of us that support you. All right. I was standing about 20 feet away from you at the march on January 4th. I was there on Saturday and Sunday, and when you told your story, I was crying just like you were. Okay, so again, you're not alone. Trust me. My final words are: we can't give up this fight. We can't give up this fight. Bob Marley said it years ago. Get up, stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up, don't give up the fight. And we can't give up the fight. And we got to continue the fights for humanity, freedom, equality, and survival. And right now, this is a fight for survival, not only for Medicare for all, but for homelessness, for economic viability and survival. We have to continue to fight, because if we don't fight, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
We won't fight, what's the point? And we have to somehow rescue some sort of meaning from all of our lives. And the continuing the fight for what we all should have anyway as humans is what's going to keep us going through this movement and through everything else that we're dealing with right now. Everyone can find me on all the same social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, at Joe Nice DJ. I try to stay organized. I like being an organized brother. So that's what it is. I haven't been doing a whole lot of DJing recently, simply because I can't fly around the world like I've used to, and I can't travel. A lot of the clubs have been closed. A lot of venues have closed permanently because the government hasn't gone ahead and given them the PPP loan money or the financial assistance to stay open. So, and a lot of festivals are going to be shut down. I mean, a lot of Glastonbury in England is already canceled again They've already shut down. And so a lot of summertime, I think summer of this coming year is going to be canceled again. And there's no telling what that's going to do for the music industry going forward. But, you know, my passion has always been music, but I also have a passion for people. I also have a passion for people and their rights. So I can't play music right now. So I'm putting my energy into my other passion again, which is people. And I'm going to continue to do that for as long as possible. And when I mean as long as possible, like the rest of my life, because I'm a person too.
Joe, as soon as the concerts come back, throwing a fucking rager before we go to Coachella. We'll have a bunch of darties out there. We're flying you out there, and you're a fucking DJ.
Oh, bro, look. All you get, 2 turntables, big sound system. It's over. It's over. Give me a microphone. Oh, it's done. It's a wrap. It's a wrap, man.
I love it. I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming on for this stream. That was like the first like group panel discussion I've had in a very long time. So I'm stoked. I'm stoked at how well that went. Thank you, everyone in the audience who tuned in, for your incredible input, for your generous contributions. Yeah, we'll do more of this shit moving forward. So if you like this, be sure to subscribe. It's the easiest way to support leftist propaganda media. And as always, fuck Dick Cheney, and I'll see all of you next time. Peace, everybody.
Bye.